In April of 1752, inside a candlelit chamber of the Habsburg court in Vienna, an 11-year-old archduchess was bled for the third time in a week on orders not from her physician, but her mother, the Empress Maria Theresa. The child's pulse faltered. Her lips blew. Her name was Maria Josepha. She would be promised to France before her first blood and branded a political commodity before she could read. What court records never mention is what happened the night before. The doctors were summoned, the muffled sobs behind velvet drapes, the red-stained linens burned in the kitchens, and the whisper that her innocence had been used as leverage in a clandestine pact between monarchs. If you want to uncover more hidden truths like this, subscribe now and comment below where you're listening from. I read everyone. 3 nights later, the palace tailor was found hanging by his own measuring tape in the servants' wing, his tongue severed and tucked into his vest pocket. He was 24. Rumors slipped through the corridors like scented smoke. He had seen something he should never have seen. A bustle of silk at the wrong hour, a name muttered in the dark. Whispers pointed to Prince Charles of Lorraine, the Empress's brother-in-law, whose late-night visits to the nursery wing had already stirred unease among the wet nurses. No formal inquiry was conducted. The tailor's death was ruled a suicide, though his fingers bore defensive wounds, and his ledger, which had once detailed fittings for child-sized corsets trimmed in gold thread, vanished from the archives overnight. By midsummer, Maria Josepha had ceased speaking entirely. Not even her nursemaid's lilting lullabies nor the chocolate truffles imported from Venice could coax her lips to move. She stared out iron-latticed windows, as if waiting for some unseen spectre. The court chaplain, Father Anselm, was assigned to her spiritual care. He reported nothing save for a single line in his diary. The child dreams in Latin. Beneath the cathedral floor, Father Anselm arranged secret exorcisms under orders from the Empress herself, but when the child began to chant during Mass, in a voice not her own, the rites were halted. Candles exploded mid-prayer. Glass icons bled crimson. Then, on August 21st, during a private audience, Maria Theresa ordered the Abbey of Melk to take the girl under permanent cloister. She was 11. Within days, her name was stricken from all public correspondence, her portraits retired, her instructors reassigned in silence. No one ever spoke of her again. The abbey, gilded and watchful over the Danube, still stands, its windows shimmer with secrets. In the autumn of that same cursed year, a new governess arrived at the court, Magdalena Winter, age 31, recently dismissed from the Saxon elector's household, under circumstances that were politely referred to as indelicate. Her arrival was unheralded, no fanfare, no chamber assigned, only a sealed letter from the Empress bearing her personal wax. Within days, 2 of the younger imperial sons fell ill with convulsions described by onlookers as godless in nature. Magdalena was never seen praying. She wore no cross. She kept feathers, bones, and powdered crystals in a velvet pouch beneath her skirts. At night, she wandered the halls with a candle and a book bound in calfskin with no title. One of the laundry girls, barely 14, claimed to have seen her kiss the crucifix in reverse. The girl was dismissed the next morning, her lips bruised and her hair unevenly shorn. What Magdalena did to earn the Empress's favor was never spoken aloud, but Father Anselm's final diary entry, scrawled in haste before his disappearance, read only, "The governess knows the rites, but not for salvation." By the first snowfall of 1752, the Empress ordered a banquet, ostensibly to mark the feast of St. Leopold, but behind the velvet curtains of the Hofburg's inner salons, it was something else entirely. 20 guests, hand-picked and masked, gathered by candelabra, arranged in a pentacle on the marble floor. Magdalena presided like a priestess, her eyes rimmed in ash, her hands veiled in black lace. Among the guests were military commanders, widowed countesses, and a boy violinist imported from Prague, age 9, instructed to play without ceasing. Servants were forbidden entry, yet the kitchen fires burned all night. Sometime past the second hour, screams curled up the spiral stairwell, and a tremor shook the eastern wing. By dawn, 2 of the noblewomen were gone. No carriage tracks on the frost, no mention of departure in the court journal. Prince Charles was found passed out in the rose garden, his tongue bitten through, whispering, "The wax drips backward." over and over again. The violinist's name was never recorded. His instrument was found days later, cradled in ice beneath the Empress's chapel. Its strings snapped, one by one. The following week, Magdalena Winter was made lady-in-waiting to the Empress herself. Magdalena's ascent, unspoken yet absolute, coincided with a plague of silences. Children once lively grew listless. Chamberlains forgot their own names mid-sentence. Paintings in the West Gallery, all depicting saints and martyrdoms, were taken down overnight and replaced with abstract panels, black lacquer, veined with thin, red thread. The Empress smiled more often now, but without joy, like porcelain cracked at the corners. On December 12th, a blizzard sealed the palace grounds. That night, Magdalena summoned 6 noble daughters to the Empress's solar, each under 15, each donned in white. They brought no guards. They returned with bleeding palms and no memories. What was exchanged within that chamber was never recorded. Only the scent of myrrh and burning sage lingered, and bloodstone powder dusted the floors. Just before Christmas, a pyre was seen smoldering along the frost-gutted orchard. No one approached it. A shepherd boy claimed to see limbs, gloved in lace, among the flames. He vanished before Epiphany. And still, the Empress said nothing. Only that spring would bring peace. Peace never came. In February of 1753, a ledger surfaced briefly among the court stewards, listing expenditures for saffron, goat's blood, and one Bohemian child blind, mute, 6 years of age. It vanished the next morning, and with it, the steward responsible. That same week, the river bordering Melk Abbey froze solid, and beneath the ice, townsfolk claimed to see shapes that twisted slowly, hands, faces, wrists bound in rosary beads. Back at court, the Empress fell ill without warning. Her skin blistered in geometric patterns. Physicians called it Street Anthony's fire, but their remedies failed. Magdalena assumed control of her schedule, her meals, even her confessions. One night, the Empress was heard shrieking in Old Church Slavonic, a language she never studied. Her cries pierced the stained glass and woke the kitchens, but come morning, she denied any disturbance. Her hair had turned white. Weeks later, Prince Charles of Lorraine was found drowned in the fountain beneath the marble cherub, wrists slit and eyes removed. In his quarters, a crude drawing was nailed to the wall, an eye eclipsed by a serpent. At the bottom, a single word etched in blood. Remember. The court entered Lent in utter silence. No bells rang. The abbey closed its doors, and somewhere behind the frost-laced drapery of the Empress's room, the scent of myrrh returned, heavier now, almost sweet. By Easter of 1753, the court celebrated no resurrection. The Empress had not been seen for 9 days. Her officials claimed illness, fatigue, a period of spiritual fasting, but the truth seeped out like oil through parchment. Servants spoke of a low keening from behind her chambers, a keening that never paused for breath. At dusk on Maundy Thursday, Magdalena Winter emerged alone, face streaked with soot, her fingers raw and blackened. She announced with calm that the Empress had entered divine retreat and would henceforth speak only to God. Her chambers were sealed. No one was permitted entry, save for Magdalena and a mute nun who appeared from Melk Abbey, unnamed. In the weeks that followed, affairs of state were conducted under Magdalena's hand. Several ministers resigned. One leaped from the bell tower of St. Stephen's Cathedral, striking the cobblestones in silence. Deep in the night, riders came and went, their saddlebags carrying scrolls marked with the same sigil found in Prince Charles's blood, the serpent and the eye. Storms gathered over Vienna without thunder, only rain, unceasing, until the Danube foamed. Then, just as swiftly, the clouds parted. By midsummer, Magdalena was gone, vanished. Her name purged from court records, her rooms stripped bare. The Empress reappeared only once, thin as reeds, dressed in the robes of a widow. She spoke not of Magdalene, nor of those who vanished, only of devotion, sacrifice, and silence. Then she withdrew forever. The Hofburg palace still stands, but some nights, when the mist coats its stones, the scent of myrrh returns, and the chapel windows hum with a sound no priest dares name. Records within the imperial crypt list the Empress's death as occurring in late 1780, but for nearly 3 decades prior, she was seldom glimpsed. A shrouded figure at balcony mass, a ghost shadow behind brocade drapes. Her children ruled in her stead, yet all bore scars invisible to the eye. Marie Antoinette, with her ruinous naivety, Joseph II with his fevered reforms and nocturnal wanderings. None ever spoke of their mother's silence. In private letters now yellowed and unsigned, references surfaced to the altar beneath the vaults, the pact sealed in saffron, and a veiled woman whose footsteps held no echo. In her final months, the Empress reportedly demanded every mirror in the Hofburg shattered, every bell silenced, every cross turned inward. When her body was finally placed in the Capuchin crypt, it was said no priest would bless it conventionally. Only the nun from Melk remained, lips stitched shut in eternal vigil at her feet. The palace still stands, and those who pass its chapel after midnight say the glass no longer reflects the living. Some say the silence that followed was not peace, but penance. At Melk Abbey, records show a sudden influx of orphaned girls in 1754, exactly 17, all bearing the same birthmark along the right wrist, a crescent, partially eclipsed. They were taught no scripture, only silence and obedience. One diary, hidden in the hollow of a chapel stool and signed with the initial M, claims the girls were daughters of the rite, not of flesh, born under blood moons and buried in ash. In accompanying margins, a hand less practiced had scrawled, "The Empress bore more than heirs. No confirmation was ever pursued." The monks who might have known died in a single night during Advent, their bodies found contorted in the cloister garden, mouths black with clove and salt. Only the nun remained, silent, watching the river. When she too vanished, a novice whispered she'd walked onto the frozen Danube and sank without a struggle. The ice never cracked, it simply closed around her, soundlessly. Today, Melk still towers above the river, holy in form, hollow in memory. And the stones remember what the prayers will not. They never gave the girls names, only numbers. 13, for instance, was found weeping beside the cloister well, her teeth wrapped in linen, her eyes caked with ash. She did not speak, but her humming matched the cadence of ancient psalms no longer in the books. 11 painted serpents in the corners of her cell, always with wings, always devouring a rose. And 2 who never grew taller than a child, despite her age, stared into corners where no one stood and answered questions no one asked. The abbess, it is said, never left her chambers, save for one night each solstice. Then, all candles extinguished by unseen hands. Thunder rolled, though no clouds marked the sky. And always in the chapel, just before dawn, a single crimson taper burned on the altar placed by no one, guarded by all. In the final entry found sewn into the hem of 13's shift, the girl had written, "The rite was for her soul, not her crown. We were her tithe." And then, one line more, shakier than the rest, just these words, "She promised to come back." In the winter of 1755, the abbey's bells rang for no one. Snow fell in unbroken silence, as if the heavens themselves refused to speak. Deep beneath the sanctuary, in a chamber not listed on any blueprint, the eclipse-marked girls were led one by one into a circle carved in salt. None returned. Only one remained silent since the day of her arrival, always watching the moon. On the Feast of the Purification, she lit 13 black candles and sang in a voice that did not belong to her. The cloister doors splintered without touch, statues of saints wept soot, and in the main hall, where manuscripts once lined the walls, parchment curled into ash and names reversed themselves on the page. That night, the Empress's signet ring, long thought interred with her, was found on the chapel altar, warm to the touch. The nun's stitched lips gaped open, revealing not a tongue but a pearl-black stone, pulsing faintly. No records follow, only silence. Just above the apse, one stained glass window remains darker than the rest, towering, watchful, and when the sun strikes it just so, the eyes within it do not reflect the light they consume it. Years passed, but within the monastery walls, time did not heal it ossified. By 1762, only 5 of the original 17 remained, their memories fragmented, their eyes rimmed in sleep they never found. The abbey had become a hush inside stone, a place not of prayer but of patience. Then came the seventh blood moon, rising cloudless over the Danube on Midsummer's Eve. The chapel filled with scentless smoke. The bell tolled once, though no rope moved. In her locked cell, one awoke laughing, her laughter layered, voices beneath voices. The abbess fell that night, her body found floating inches above the floor, suspended by threads of her own hair. Beneath her, a symbol burned into the stones. Half sun, half serpent, crowned royal. Before sunrise, one had vanished, but on her cot lay 13 teeth, still wet, still warm. In Vienna, within a shuttered salon of the Hofburg long since forgotten, a single lute was heard plucking a lullaby none remembered teaching. And in Melk, beneath the darkest window of them all, the glass finally cracked from the inside. The crack spread like a fracture in reality, thin as a silken seam at first, and then widening, slow and deliberate, across the cold pane. No one touched it, no wind blew. Yet by morning, the entire window had shattered inward, each shard embedded in the marble floor like teeth in a closed mouth. There were no witnesses, only echoes, soft footsteps in snowless halls, faint whispering in a language no scholar dared to name. The girls were gone by then, all of them. Their cells stripped, their garments folded beneath unlit candelabras. The only remaining sign was a faint spiral scored into the stone behind the altar, where 13 candles had once stood. In the Hofburg, those who still tended the Empress's memorial claimed to see a woman in black near the Queen's crypt, head bowed, not praying but listening. The nuns' vigil had long ceased, the pearl-black stone lost, yet the shadow of her silence lingered in every corridor. And on each anniversary of her disappearance, a single drop of blood stains the chapel altar unseen until the bells toll dusk. What price was paid, none dare speak aloud, only that something was bargained, something was bound, and something still is waiting. The abbey still stands, but its stones no longer echo, they absorb. Not long after the window shattered, the abbey was declared uninhabitable. They said it was mold, or perhaps the collapse of a supporting vault beneath the crypt, but no workman would stay past dusk, and no tool stayed sharp. Candles refused to light inside the nave. Birds never flew near it again. In Vienna, a new empress rose, regal and clean of name, yet never spoke of her predecessor, not in proclamations, not in prayer. A book was once discovered, shelved backward, and sealed with red twine, titled only Mater Sanguinis. It vanished before dawn. Those who had read even a page dreamed of steps descending forever, of hands clutching from shadows, of a lullaby sung too slowly. The Hofburg's walls began to weep in winter, thin trails of salt scoring the stone like tears. Whispers in the servant halls spoke of a queen who never died, merely receded her soul, not buried, but tethered. And some say, if you place your ear to the marble in Melk's chapel floor tonight, you'll hear hymns sung in voices unaged, unbroken, and counting. And still, no priest dared utter her name. In private, they called her the Hollow Queen. In inkless margins, monks wrote prayers backward, then burned the parchment in bowls of wine. One final record remains, scratched not on vellum, but carved hastily into the underside of a pew in the East Chapel. 4 lines. When the wax runs cold, she will rise. When her teeth return, she will speak. When 13 tapers burn at once, she will choose. Not a kingdom, a vessel, no initials, no date. Just below it, the wood scorched black in a perfect ring, as if some candle had burned not with flame, but time itself. The abbey's great bell has not sounded since, yet in the silence, a different rhythm pulses, breathing, remembering. The Hofburg still lifts its regal spires to a sky gone distant, but beneath its flags and frescoes, the stone remembers the touch of blood, and beneath Melk's shattered glass, even silence prays not to wake her. In the years that crawled through the latter half of the 18th century, the abbey was reopened not for worship, but for storage. Crates of forgotten relics lined the chapel, dust-covered harpsichords and tapestries too stained for display, but those who stacked them whispered of flickers in the apse, of cold feet, despite roaring hearths. A mason, laying new tiles over the cracked altar, vanished mid-shift, leaving only his tools in perfect parallel. And in Vienna, A midwife receiving an imperial summons collapsed upon opening the sealed envelope. Her breath caught, her eyes went black. Before slipping into silence, she spoke her last words. She has chosen. The vessel is named. The name, if heard by anyone, was never repeated. But that spring, a child was born to a minor noble, lungs filled before the first cry, eyes black with reflection, not depth. She did not scream, only stared. At her christening, no water held in the font, no priest would lift her, and when the bells of Melk tolled 13 at dusk, though they'd long been rusted through, her mother wept not with joy, but with knowing. The abbey still stands, but no map dares mark the chamber beneath the fifth arch, and beneath that, still, something listens, something waits. The child was named Adelinde, though the priest never finished saying it. His throat locked mid-syllable, and a line of dark blood traced his collarbone. He lived, but never spoke again. From her first breath, Adelinde moved in silence. Her footsteps left soot behind, mirrors in her presence fogged, even unlit. By her third birthday, she could recite prayers no one had taught, in languages no nursemaid recognized. On her fifth, she vanished for 3 days, found kneeling on the chapel altar of an abandoned cloister outside Graz, eyes closed, hands folded over the Empress's long-lost ring. No one saw who placed it there. By 11, she had written hymns in ash along the walls of her chamber, though she claimed no memory of doing so. 13 days before her 13th birthday, the abbey bells tolled again 13 times, without wind or cord. That night, frost bloomed across the Danube in the shape of an open eye, and beneath the Hofburg, in a room no longer marked, the black candles reappeared, all 13, lit, waiting. Adelinde did not run. She simply walked forward, her palms open. She smiled, but it was not her smile. And far above, in Melk's shattered window frame, darkness gathered without stars. The abbey still stands, and beneath its final arch, something breathes, not asleep, not awake, only waiting to return. By the time the harvest moon rose in September of 1768, the final rite began. No priests, no vows, only silence, blood and shadow. In the cloister below Melk's forgotten wing, Adelinde stood encircled by 13 figures, all masked in black silk, their bodies draped in robes woven with strands of hair. Each held out a taper, and each taper burned with flame that gave no warmth. The girl's eyes never blinked. Her voice, when it came, splintered through stone, a tongue not ancient but unmade, syllables never spoken before. The walls wept, the earth below pulsed, and in the Hofburg, far away in a chamber sealed for 16 years, the portrait of the Empress cracked from crown to chin. Stones shifted in the crypt. In Vienna, lilies bloomed in winter. Time hiccuped. Witnesses were none, yet all knew. A hush fell across court and country alike, the kind felt in the heart, not heard in the ear. Something had crossed, not born nor conjured, but returned. And in the final scrawl of an anonymous page boy, left behind in a boot heel soiled with ash, only one sentence explains what history will not. She does not seek a throne, only a mirror. The abbey still stands, but no bird's nest above it, no bells toll within it, and no shadow cast inside its chapel dares fall the same way twice. And so they sealed the mirrors, one by one. Silver scraped from glass, frames shrouded in velvet. In every chamber of the Hofburg where the Empress once walked, reflections ceased to answer the gaze. They feared not what they would see, but what would look back. The abbey, long abandoned by scripture, grew colder than stone could bear. Beneath its altar, no prayers rose, only breath, steady and ancient. They say the stones pulse on solstice nights, as if remembering. And though no angels guard its gate, the air itself seems to hold its own vigil, watching, waiting, because what crossed through was never meant to stay, but never again to be sent back. A queen without a crown, a soul without end. Hollow, yes, but not empty, not gone. Beneath Melk, behind the last unbroken wall, one thing remains, the mirror, unsealed, unclaimed, waiting, for the one who will not ask, but remember. They never marked her grave. If such a place exists, it is not under earth or stone, But beneath silence, somewhere past the count of 13, where even time holds its breath, the last abbess died clutching a shard of mirror. Her eyes burned black, and her lips curled in something too cold to be called a smile. In Vienna, disappearing ink authored a final decree never endorsed, never enforced, declaring the abbey a place of no sanctity. And yet, pilgrims came. No paths marked their arrival, no names recorded. They only stood before the dark glass where windows once caught morning light, touching it with fingers they did not lift voluntarily. Some wept, some sang without sound. All left changed or vanished, and in the shadow of Melk, where frost never melts and birds never sing, one whisper rides the wind, softer than thought, older than tongues. She remembers you. The abbey still stands, and so does her mirror. No chronicle dares close the pages. No relic, no rite has undone what was summoned. In the shadowed groves beyond Melk's final cloisters, roots twist in patterns echoing the broken seal, 13 paths winding nowhere. The mirror beneath the abbey, untouched for lifetimes, breathes still. Its surface ripples without air, as if listening. Sometimes it shivers, sometimes it sighs. And when the moon strikes just right, above frost-thick stones and veils of ash, it shows not a face, but a crown of light without warmth, eyes without end. No grave holds her. She is not remembered because she was never truly gone. In every silence that stretches too long, in every prayer that turns thin and dark, she waits, not for worship, not for mercy, but for the one who does not turn away. The abbey still stands, and beneath it, the hollow queen watches, through the glass. So ends the tale never told, a chronicle unwritten by quill or creed, only by gestures in darkened rooms and echoes beneath marble crypts. Her name, her form, her face they shift, impossible to hold, like breath on glass. Yet one truth clings to the stone. Power unclaimed does not vanish, it waits. And beneath Melk's broken towers, the hollow queen is still waiting, not for ceremony, not for requiem, for memory, for return, for the 13th taper to burn once more. The abbey still stands, and if you stare too long into its last unshattered pane, you may see yourself not as you are, but as you were promised to become. It is said that on the 13th hour of the 13th day, in the 13th year after her ascension, the final watcher fell. His journal, bound in flesh and sealed with wax black as pitch, bore no words, only a mirrored circle drawn again and again until the page tore. No procession marked his passing, no candle lit, just a silence deeper than night, a hush that blanketed even the wind. In that moment, every shattered reflection in the abbey's depths stilled, not broken, but dormant, sleeping perhaps, or listening. And above, far above, where towers once caught starlight but now drink only shadow, a single pane of stained glass, unshattered, untouched, gleamed violet for the first time in centuries. A single eye at its center blinked, slowly, remembering. The abbey still stands, buried in silence. And beyond its final door, past memory and marrow, she waits not for names, not for rituals, but for recognition. To be seen not as legend, but as what she was and is, not hollow, eternal. No scribe will finish the tale, no altar will bear the last prayer. She who once ruled beneath veils and whispers has no ending written in stone, only the unfinished breath between now and never. For each year past the 13th hour, reflection becomes invitation. The mirror grows more still, yes, but not from rest, from intent. It awaits not just the vessel or the vigil, but the return of memory itself, be it in the flicker of candlelight on bare walls, or the hush of a name unsaid before sleep. They will call her myth, they will call her curse, but those who know, who have stood at Melk's threshold in the hush before snow, understand she was never gone, only withheld, because what was promised must return, and the hollow queen still crowned, still waiting, does not forgive forgetfulness. She remembers. The abbey still stands. So if you find yourself beneath the dark slope of Melk at twilight, and the river lies still as if listening, do not speak, do not pray, do not gaze too long into the pane above the 5th arch, where all other glass has shattered but one. Instead, turn back. For if you linger even a heartbeat too long, you may hear something behind you. Not footsteps, not breath, just the memory of it, curling like smoke before sound, before light. And should your reflection in the chapel's unbroken mirror blink when you do not, remember, it is not always the dead who haunt the living. Sometimes it is the forgotten. Sometimes it is the promised. The abbey still stands, but behind its stones, the hollow queen waits not to be feared, but to be recalled, and no silence is ever empty if she is listening.